the tragic fires at Lahaina, just like fires all around the world globally, require three primary elements for a wildfire. That's a fuel load, its aridity, and an ignition source. Those three elements can be exacerbated, as they were at Lahaina, by high winds. We'll start with the fuel load first. The area around Lahaina over the last century or so has been dominated by agriculture. The areas and the fields that are now covered with grasses were fields where they're growing pineapples and sugar cane. The closing of the processing plants meant that agriculture of those crops were abandoned, and they've now been reclaimed by invasive grasses. If you'd looked at the area around Lahaina like I did before the fire, you'd see the entire area is just covered with brown grass. And it's these grasses that provide the fuel load. The aridity was caused by a seasonal drought. It occurs every year on Maui between May 15th and the end of July. The wet season is earlier, and in fact, it wasn't, you may not know, but this year was wetter and colder, cooler than normal. So what we had there was the wetter weather accelerated the grass growth and increased the fuel load of the grasses. And the ignition source was caused by electricity. 98% of all ignitions in Hawaii are human caused by accidents, down power lines and such. And in this case, we had the strong, what are called lehua winds that come across the mountain. They rush down the western slope of the mountain, and they're funneled into the town of Lahaina, very similar to the Santa Ana winds or the Diablo winds of California. And these winds came down 60, 80 miles an hour, knocked down power lines, sparking fires and setting them off. So all these things combined, of course, the high winds from these lehua winds accelerated the fire into the town of Lahaina. You may also not know, in 1858, when Lahaina was a very much smaller town, the center of the city was destroyed by a very similar event. So these lehua winds, they occur 2, maybe 3 times a year. And once every 10 or 12 years, they get very bad, like we did this year. So these are all natural events, and none of these events are related to climate change. They would have occurred with high CO2 levels or low CO2 levels. They would have occurred with high temperatures or low temperatures. So again, it was not related to climate change.